Hi, Missy.
I'm so happy to see you today.
Yeah, you get to see me twice.
I know. Isn't that beautiful? Thank goodness for vaccinations and boosters, huh?
Yep.
Aren't they amazing? So great. Oh, I have to silence my phone. Hold on. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am super excited to be back live on Facebook because it has been, I think, a year since I've done an interview series on Facebook. So this is very exciting. I'm super excited about it. I just wanted to let everybody know that this is the first in a series of interviews that I am doing about, this all came about because of a conversation I had with my friend Karin, and we were talking about, you'll love this, Mom. We were talking about how we dehumanize people in order to marginalize them and silence them. And so we ended up having this incredible conversation about how we can start talking about love and grace and spirit and acknowledging that potentially we might have multi-level marketed our economy to the point where there's people at the top and people at the bottom and no one in between. So I'm so thrilled that I'm going to be having these conversations every week at 9 a.m. Pacific for about 12 weeks. I think the series goes until, and it was really funny because Karin said to me, do you know anyone who is like a crone and who's older and who could talk about these things? And I was like, I do know someone who fits that bill. And that someone is my amazing mom, who is also a Reiki master and an author and a retired nurse and all of the things. So, Mom, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm really happy to see you, and I'm happy you are part of this first conversation that we are having about engaging with love. So, would you please take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody who's watching?
Sure. I taught school in the early 70s. Fourth grade was delightful. Then I became a nurse. My favorite nursing job was hospice. And I'm an author. This lovely book is out, My Own Darling. It's about my parents, over 800 love letters. That's Missy's grandmother and grandfather when they were 17.
We're going to put the link to that in the show notes.
And I am currently working on a memoir. The working title is An Uneven Life, Grief, and Other Shenanigans. Because I think I shenanigize through life. That's a word I made up. Thank you. You may use it. Anyone may use it. Shenanigize is a good word.
I think that's a beautiful word, Mom.
And I love to be out in nature. I love to walk. Yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. So I would love it. I would like to start our conversation by asking you about, so this question comes from a conversation I had with my friend Stephanie Zong, and we were talking about transformative experiences in life. And the way she said it is, what is the pain that grew you the most? So what is the pain that grew you the most in your life?
Well, you know, when I was a kid growing up, a child growing up in the 50s and 60s, I, without realizing it, being a member of the Mormon Church was actually painful for me. But I have had certainly your dad's suicide was, I think, transformative in the way that the pain was there, certainly. However, I was transformed and was able to get out of the church that way. And I believe that my spirituality started my knowledge about who I am, the crone, the witch, the spirit, the Buddhist, it all came out. The Druid, it all came out, started coming out.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that so often I feel like we have our biggest spiritual growth from the most devastating experiences? Like, for example, I remember when Lauren and I were getting divorced and I was just eviscerated and dying of a broken heart. I had this moment where I realized that when Dad died, you were dying of the same broken heart that I was, and that we had had similar experiences as women.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that transformation, what do you think it takes for that transformation to grow you instead of destroy you?
I would say the word that came to me immediately was allow. And I actually allowed myself to do what needed to be done. There was drugs, sex, and rock and roll. There was still wanting to be a really good mom, but getting lost at times. And but then coming back and knowing that I was doing my best at the time. And then I did a really good job after that.
You did.
So, well, I still, and I look back and I did a fairly good job. At the time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there was a roof over your head and plenty of food and clothing, and and you got to do what you wanted to do as you grew up. And in terms of athletics or whatever was interesting to you. So I think when you have a loss or a big thing happen, if you allow yourself to grow.
Ooh, grow in grief.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Well, just grow in loss. I mean, loss could mean a job. Loss could mean a lot of things. And we grieve. That's the other thing, because I started the grief group after Vern died. And that's the thing you learn. For one thing, you grieve when you lose your handbag. You grieve when our little things, your favorite coffee shop closed, which mine did.
I know. I'm so sorry you've lost your favorite coffee shop. That was a huge grief process.
Oh, I cried.
I know.
And I called corporate. So just anybody is listening who goes to Pete's Coffee, I have one, but it's 8 miles away and I go anyway, at least once or twice a week. But so grief is not, it's big things and little things. It's about, and I think handling grief is very important. Allowing yourself to handle the grief, however that is, even if it's drugs, sex, and rock and roll.
Yeah. I think that it's really interesting because so many of the women that I work with, that is what we do is grief work. Like they've held it and held it and held it for so long that when they work with me, that grief just explodes out. And
well, one thing that's very important about grief, and I was on Oprah, I did the whole whatever thing, right? I'm infamous, not famous, let's just say. Is that if you put the work off and you let it, you just don't do the work that happens for the first 2 or 3 or 4 years of grief. Yeah. Then when someone else dies, it comes back tenfold or 100-fold. So I mean, there are no have-tos, but the best advice I can give is to do the work.
Yeah.
Because
feel the feels, right? Feel the feels. Do the work. Feel the feels. Yeah.
Feel the feels, because if you don't, you will explode, and you will implode, and I think that's really hard. And it's just, men don't do it very well because they have to be like this, and women sometimes aren't allowed to do it.
Yeah. I love that word allow, Mom. It's so good.
It is a good word. It's a great word.
How can people be changed by engaging with love?
Let me count the ways. I mean, God, love is that thing that's kind of ephemeral, but on the other hand, it's there. It's just there. I have seen a great deal of change in your dad, Dan, because he didn't want to say I love you. He didn't use the word. And then I said to him one day, well, everybody uses that word in my family, so you have to use it. And then the feeling comes after you use the word. And now he understands it and he feels the love. So that's my tangible example of love. But we are about love. We human beings, and especially I think we women, because we're good examples of love that just is. Yeah. Unconditional love. And you have your dogs and your cats and hamsters. I mean, it doesn't matter. They are unconditional love. You can't help but look at Dakota and Potato and Sky and just go, oh, love. They get on your couch or, they give you a hug or whatever. And it's like, oh, yeah. And they comfort. So humans have that capability of comforting each other.
What do you think would happen if we engaged more people from that space of knowing that we are all love?
Oh, well. You want me to get started?
Yes.
My war was Vietnam. I had friends die in Vietnam. I have friends still who've come back and they get cancer and they die. And they have horrible PTSD. They finally know what it is. Daddy came home and said he had shell shock. Well, that's PTSD from World War II. If we acknowledged love, we could end wars. If we acknowledged love in its big universal form, and practiced it, therein lies the rub. If we practiced it unconditionally, Putin would not feel unloved. And I watched these people crossing into Poland. I mean, they're leaving their husbands, their men, their sons, their brothers behind. And those men, those women and children are equally as brave as those men.
Oh, yeah.
They have to be. And yet they want their country and they want their love. They love their country. And if we had love, we would end war. We could. I guess
I've been thinking a lot about this because one of the things that's really struck me, especially since I started preaching, is this idea that when we deny our spiritual connection and when we deny our connection to something bigger than us, either because Empire Christianity has used it as a weapon against our bodies and our lives as women, as LGBT people, whatever it is, right? As colonizers, like all of these things that have been done in the name of Empire Christianity, which is to take over. But also there's a subconscious, and I think this is what happened when growing up in Utah and not being Mormon, is that the denial of God as source, like not God in the white Christianity way, but God as creator.
Yeah.
We deny that spiritual connection to the divine. I think what you're talking about is that expands our ability to dehumanize people.
Oh, absolutely. There is no doubt in my mind that it dehumanizes. Because of the 60s and me holding placards, and I didn't literally burn my bra, but I would have literally burned my bra if I could have. And me being the rebellious kid with my few non-Mormon friends, even in high school, and then in college, certainly, we were denied a lot of things, and all we were doing was trying to figure it out and take care of each other and love each other. So the universal idea of love, and I look up because the universal idea of love is very much a part of Reiki, which is the Tibetan healing art that centers the chakra system. But it's an energy, and we are energy. See, I think we forget that our brain works on firing, and our spinal column fires, and we are energetic beings. Our hearts don't work without an electrical impulse. And that energy could be used to change
and expand instead of contract, right? And I think so often we are taught that expansion isn't okay.
Oh yeah, especially, I mean, even men are taught not to expand.
Yeah.
Little boys are taught, you don't, you have this dream, well, forget about it, because you aren't of the upper class. You don't have
what it takes.
You don't have the chutzpah of what it takes. You'll never get there. And women certainly have to overcome that too.
Yeah. What do you, part of the reason, like, we dehumanize Putin, right? Like, because this is not okay. But what you talked about was that this dehumanization of people, he has dehumanized all of the people of Ukraine in order to go in and demolish and decimate that country. We do it with homeless people here, or poor people here, or people of color here all the time in the United States.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, this is why the homeless problem has gotten so horrifying in the Pacific Northwest. And I think it's happening everywhere, but I think in particular, it's just a stamp. People are now running over people on the freeway because there's so many homeless people in Portland. Like, it's insane. And we dehumanize them. Like, they need to get it together, right?
Yeah.
That whole thing. How have you seen people dehumanize others to justify shitty behavior? And I'm particularly curious about it in the spiritual space, because you are a Reiki master and because you understand that spiritual space and how toxic it can get so quickly. How have you seen the role of dehumanization play itself out in the work of healing?
Oh, well, let's just talk about the homeless, shall we? The mental health issues. We closed all the mental health hospitals in the United States. Now, some of them weren't great, but they were there. And over time, they would have grown to be what they needed to be. With the change in the opinions of the medical community, the mental health community, those hospitals would have changed. Now, it costs a lot of money to get mental health help. Even, Reiki practitioners usually work on a sliding scale. I used to say, I will give you Reiki for donuts or brownies or whatever, just make me some cookies. And and we tend to work towards that way anyway. But I think that spiritually in this country, kind of at a loss, I think, to understand spirituality. And so when people are ailing, and when they're physically ailing or mentally ailing, we forget that they are also spiritual beings. And it's like Wayne Dyer said, one of my favorite quotes from him is, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And this human experience for some is just dreadful. I mean, it makes me sad, and the homeless situation is just, and yet they are probably the most spiritual people you'll ever meet because
You
of
and
what
I,
they're experiencing. They are experiencing true spirituality. And who knows what, I mean, they may end up being, if they could get help, maybe they would be the leaders. I also believe in terms of Putin, I think he's got some dementia issues.
oh, that's interesting.
And I do know a lot about that. And I do believe he has dementia issues.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You and I recently were talking about this in the context of Vern dad. So for those of you who are watching, do not be confused. I have my dad who committed suicide when I was 6, and then I have my dad, Dan. So when mom talks about dad, it's usually Dan. But we were just talking about the idea that because Vern was Native American, that may have played a part in his own dehumanization. Especially within the context of the Mormon Church. And one of my interviews is with a woman named Monica Crowfoot, who I actually found on TikTok. But she always talks about the LDS Church and their treatment of Native people. And I think that it allows us to, when we start thinking about the dehumanization of others and what we can do from a space of love to help people, and just being willing to have this conversation and be curious about it, I think opens us up to greater spiritual expansion so that we can really approach things from a space of love and compassion. Because what you've been wrestling with as you've been writing your own memoir is your feelings towards him for committing suicide.
Well, and of course, I was only 31 and I had 2 little kids. Yes. Hello. I'm now 72, everyone. So what I'm finding, and I talked to Dan about it, and he's listening with just open heart and open mind about this whole thing. And it definitely has to be a part of what I'm telling, because I believe that there were business things that he was going to be thrown under the bus about with his partners, and that leads to it. But I think his abuse as an infant, I don't know when, but from his whole life, including after I married him.
Yeah.
And I remember, this is going to be so important because yes, the Native American thing I've gone down the rabbit hole of research now, and will continue to do so. At least I'm not going to make it, this.
It's your story.
Yeah, but he's part of my story, right? So telling part of his story. And Missy, I think the thing when we talked about, when we were talking about this, that your great-grandmother was in a cave.
Great-grandmother, yeah.
Great-grandmother Annie was in a cave with many Native Americans, and the Mormons blew it up and killed them all. And then they are asked to become Mormon.
Yeah.
So I think, to say the least, how I feel about the church is not, there are no words. I mean,
it's bad history.
It's bad history. It's, there's whole books about Joseph Smith, one of which is No Man Knows My History, about the negative parts of that whole thing. Yeah. And by Fawn Brody. And I just know in my heart, that that's part of the reason he committed suicide.
And we have to approach that knowledge from a space of compassion and love.
Absolutely.
Because there's no healing that can take place without those things.
No, and we have to remember the generational trauma.
Yeah. But we also have to remember the generational survivorship.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're here having these conversations, is because our ancestors expect us to thrive.
Yeah, they do. They stand by us. They sit on our shoulders. Aunt Eunice is here all day long, all night long.
Smoking her cigarette, drinking her bourbon.
Cigarette.
Okay, I have one more question.
My mother's sister, by the way, my fave.
She was so beautiful. I have one more question, and then I have a surprise question. So, where I was preaching a couple months ago, I think it was, and it was last month, and I, of course, got to preach about Jesus turning water into wine, which is just alchemy. Let's be real. That's magic, people. The crossover between the pagans and the Christians is not a coincidence, right?
No.
So, but the thing I realized as I was really reading that part of scripture is that it was Mary, his mother, who was like, hey, buddy, let's show him what you're made of. And Jesus is like, no way, lady. And he's like, we're at a wedding. This is a celebration. And she's like, they need more wine. So why don't you show them what you're made of? And he's like, I'm not going to listen to you. Right. Like he was like fighting with his mom, as most children do. Perhaps you've had that experience once or twice as a mother. So there's this whole thing where Mary's like, come on, buddy, I got your back. Let's do this. And I had this thought, and this is what I love about this question. What if we all listened to our big mother, the divine mother, the mother earth? What if we all listened to our mother? What is one thing you think would change for people if we started to listen to Mother Earth and the divine mother? What do you think would happen?
I think they would start caring about each other instead of being at odds over little things. And we certainly, if we listen to Mother, our earth will survive and thrive. If we don't, she's upset.
Yeah, she's so mad.
She's a little pissed off right now.
Who can blame her? I don't blame her.
I don't blame her at all.
You can only rape and pillage a woman for so long before she fights back.
Absolutely.
So I like that a lot. That's really good. So the surprise question I have for you is this. If you could have one thing delivered to you right now, what would it be?
A Hires lemon chicken sandwich and a fresh lime.
Oh my God! I love that. For those of you who are not from Utah or from Salt Lake City, there's a restaurant called Hires, which is our old family fave. I get fry sauce from there delivered to my house because I love it so much. And they have the best. Oh God, a fresh lime sounds so delightful, Mom. Thanks.
I know. You're welcome. And well, the thing about Hires is it's a car. You drive up. They didn't have a sit down restaurant until many years ago. But when I was a teenager, we'd go get a toasted poppy seed bun and a Coke or a cherry Coke.
Ooh, delightful. They still have cherry Coke. I love it. Mom,
sorry, that was cherry.
No, it's really good. When do you think your book's coming out? Do you know?
No, I would say in a year to a year and a half.
Okay.
Especially since I have this new rabbit hole to go down.
The rabbit hole to go down. I've put the link to your book in the comments, My Own Darling, so that people can buy it because it's so beautiful and lovely and wonderful. And if people want to follow you, your journey is the best place to do that on Instagram, or how do you want people to find you?
They can go through you.
Okay, perfect. So if anyone wants to connect with my awesome mom,
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram as Christina V. Larsen. So whatever. I just don't post a lot. And if you want the book, you don't have to go through Amazon if you don't want to, because Amazon makes me crazy sometimes. You can email me, and Missy has my email. And I would be glad to send you one.
Awesome.
And
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mom, for being my very first interview.
You're welcome, honey. Thanks for asking.
I love you. I'll see you later.
I love you.